Hi guys, so today we're going to be making the cute little elephant topper which is on top of this cake. Not the cake itself, just the topper. So let's just dive right in. So first we're going to start with some grey fondant or sugar paste just for the elephant's body. I'm just adding a bit of Tylo powder to it here. Basically all that does is over a short period of time it will make the fondant harden quicker than if you were to just leave it open to the air and wait for it to dry and harden. It's like an accelerant. Just give that a good knead in, make sure it's all completely distributed. Don't leave it with a chunk in the middle and the outside nice and soft, because the fondant will crumble. If you put too much in one place and it dries out too much, it will become something that you can't handle very well. Now all you want to do is just separate that chunk of fondant into the respective parts for different parts of the body. So you'll have a piece for the head, the legs, the body, and don't forget to leave a tiny piece aside for the ears and the tail. Mould the main part for the body into a teardrop shape. I'm just putting it on a piece of polystyrene here just while I work on it. I've put a stick through the middle so that I've got something to support the head on. It also gives you a very small amount of stick on the bottom when you want to adhere it to the cake. It is a bit more secure. Here I'm just shaping the head, moving it between the balls of my hand to make the trunk. That way then you get a nice soft shape rather than a harsh one if you were to roll it against the surface of the table. Just hold it up to his body to make sure that you've got the head the right size and the trunk the right length. Once you're happy with the size of the head and the trunk, then you can just stick it onto the cocktail stick with a little bit of water, gently pushing down to make sure the stick doesn't come out the top of his head. Oops, I've just gone and put a nail mark in the back of there, so you can just easily rub that out. As long as you're quick and it hasn't dried, you should be able to rub it out. Shape the trunk initially just as a rough guide of where you want it to sit. If you leave it hanging there and the Tylo makes the fondant dry, then the trunk will crack. With the back of the scalpel, I'm just putting in a few marks. It's like creases in his skin on the top of the trunk. And this bit is the bit for the front legs. The reason I made the legs initially into round balls was so that I knew I was using exactly the same amount of fondant for each leg. That way you know each leg is going to be roughly the same size. Just shape the legs roughly with your fingers, making sure that his foot is quite a bit wider than the actual leg itself. Keep holding it up to the figure as you go for size. And try and make both legs look as identical as possible. I actually went back and made the legs a lot longer, which is why that bit of video suddenly seems to split. I'd tried it a few times with short legs and it didn't look right, so I made his legs a little bit longer to go up and over his shoulder. I've just stuck them on with a little bit of water again, and here I'm using the tip of a wide round piping tip. There's no shape on it, it's just a circle, and I'm using it as like a semicircle to put in his toes. So the next point would be to do his back legs, and just remember that these need to be a little shorter and chunkier, but generally the same principle as the front. and just make it look like he's sitting on his bum. And as with the front legs, just remember to put his tootsies in on the back, again with that piping tip. And again, to adhere him to the side of the elephant, just stick them on with a tiny little bit of water. I've just gone in with the back of the scalpel again with some little light lines just for some creases on his legs and just above his feet. Just another couple of creases there on the curl on his trunk, and using the end of my Dresden tool to put a couple of nostrils in the top of his trunk, just so he can breathe. Stick the trunk down at the end where you want it to actually sit. Choose a circle cutter to the right size of your little creature. Using a little bit of the leftover grey, cut the circles. These will be for his ears. I don't know why I tapped them 3 times each time I put them down, I really don't. Okay, so here is the contrasting colour I'm using on this one, because the cake is blue, so his contrasting elements are going to be blue as well. Again, using the circle cutter. This time I don't want it to be exactly the same size as the grey circle, I want it to be marginally smaller. So I'm gradually going in bit by bit and just trimming little bits off the edge until it's the right size, because I don't have exactly the right size cutter to get it as small as I want it. The blue bits are for the centres of his ears. Stick them on once you're happy with the size. And then use the same circle cutter you used for the ears to cut out a very small semicircle shape out of the bottom. That's so it shapes around his head when you put it on. If you leave it as a big circle, it's going to look very strange. Sorry, I went a little bit off camera here, I forgot what I was doing. So there are your 2 little ears. Get an idea of where you want to place them. Obviously the higher up, the more sprightly and happy he might look. The lower down, the cuter maybe. Just mark in a little mark with the Dresden tool, put some water in it, and it'll give the ear something to stick into. If you try and stick it straight on the head, you might have trouble getting it to stay put, because it won't have as much surface adhesion. Then do the same thing with the other ear. Now we just need to figure out the eye placement. I would recommend doing what I didn't do and using maybe a needle to mark out first before you go and stick the round ball tool in and make a big dent like I am here, just in case you get them somewhere you don't want them, because by this point it would be really hard to smooth those bumps out. This bit is just for the little tail. This is why I've said to make sure you leave some extra grey behind. It only needs to be a tiny little tail because elephants don't have really long ones. Just stick it on with a little bit of water and then shape it as desired. The next bit of blue is for the balloon. On my cake he is actually holding a blue balloon. So just ball it up, again with a little bit of Tylo in it, does help it dry quicker. Shape it into a ever such a slight teardrop. Now the string on the balloon is actually a piece of white wire, so I've cut a piece to the right length, and I do this with all my wire work when I'm inserting it into sugar. Curl the top with some needle nose pliers. That gives the sugar something extra to grip onto. As you can see there, Get a lighter and just heat that loop at the end until it's as red hot as you can get it. The paper around the outside will burn away, that's nothing to worry about. As soon as it's red hot, put it in the sugar. You'll see that it burns and melts the sugar. It effectively crystallizes it, and it gives it something really hard on the inside to hold on to that you cannot see. And just nip the sugar around the bottom, sorry, not the sugar, the fondant around the bottom to cover the hardened sugar where you've just inserted that wire, and that will be nice and secure. Now all balloons are obviously tied with a knot, and there's a little bit of rubber from the balloon left at the bottom, so just stick a piece on with a little bit of water to make it look a little bit more realistic. Wet the wire where he's going to go into the elephant's trunk, and very carefully push it in without damaging your balloon. This is where the needle nose pliers come in handy again, because they're nice and pointy and you don't have to get your big fingers in the way. Just make sure that the trunk looks like it's holding the balloon. Then go back, put a little bit of water in the holes that you made for the eyes. Tiny little pieces of black fondant go in there for the eyes. No need to pat it in quite as excessively as I seem to be doing here. Just a tiny little bit of black here, tiniest you can find. Roll it very, very gently in the palm of your hand to get a sausage shape, and insert for eyebrows. Again, be aware that the eyebrows form the expression, so think about that before you put them on. And try not to use a scalpel directly on your hand. I'm used to doing this, and I know that that scalpel is not particularly sharp. Here we've got a little bit of extra white by Sugar Flare. This is not the powder version, it is the gel. It's incredibly tacky, but what I tend to do is I use this little manicure tool. It's one of the ones they use for nail art, I believe. I got it in a nail art set anyway. The brushes are lovely and small, so they come in handy. But this is metal tipped. It's got a tiny little ball on it. If you dip it into the Sugar Flare gel and then just dab onto the black of the eyes, you get tiny little catch lights, making him look a little bit more lifelike and less dead-eyed. Here, this is the last piece of the grey that I had left. This I decided I was going to use to give him a little bit of a tufty mane on the top of his head. Just a few tiny little hairs. Again, just rolling it into teeny tiny sausages on the hands. I think I put 3 together here. And then just add onto his head wherever you like with a tiny piece of water, and style as required. And here is the finished product. I put a little pin in to help his trunk and the balloon stay put while they dried. But here is the cute little elephant holding a balloon. As usual guys, thanks ever so much for watching. If you do want to see future videos from me, then make sure you hit the subscribe button below. Again, if you have any comments or questions, I'll be happy to answer them, or any requests I'd be happy to fulfill as well. See you next time guys. Thanks, bye.